Hi, everybody. Landon Hoff with Denver 7, joined by Blair Miller from the Denver 7 digital team. Blair, the Denver District Attorney, this morning holding a press conference on the results of a study of the possible impacts of race and ethnicity in the DA office's prosecutorial practices. Tell us, what was this report? What was this study? How did it come about?
This is something District Attorney Beth McCann commissioned when she came into office. It's actually been several years in the making here. It basically took a look at about 5,800 felony cases that were filed by prosecutors in Denver from July 2017 to June 2018. It was commissioned by, like I said, DA McCann, funded by a center at University of Denver, and the actual study was done by a former CU Denver professor. And so after all of that analysis and talking to prosecutors within the office, that ended up in this 45-page report released today.
45-page report. So lots to unpack. A press conference earlier kind of got into the nitty-gritty. Let's start with the simple. What does this report tell us about the impact of race and ethnicity in the DA's office?
Well, based on what was available data-wise to them, we see a few things coming out of it. First things first, mostly that if you are Black or Hispanic and get arrested in Denver, that you could potentially face some more hurdles as you go through the justice system. Cases involving white defendants are twice as likely to be deferred, which basically means that eventually they could be taken off your record than if you're Black or Hispanic. We also saw that drug felonies for white people are much more likely to be handled in drug court than those cases for Black and Hispanic people. The report didn't find any differences or racial disparities when it came to basically coming to plea agreements with defendants in the case. And, it said that there was no pervasive issues of implicit bias, racism within the prosecutorial process of the Denver prosecutors.
So that's what I find interesting about this report. So it says there is no pervasive or implicit bias, but then it does point out some disparities, and it even has some recommendations for the district attorney's office. What does the report not fully tell us? You touched on it a second ago. Some data was not available. What questions are left unanswered by this report?
Well, one of the big things that stood out in the report was that basically cases for Black defendants were much more likely to be dropped later on than cases for white or Hispanic defendants, which basically could lead to the summation, for lack of a better term, that some of these cases were either being over-policed or over-prosecuted. And it's something that District Attorney McCann sort of talked about in the press conference.
The study did not drill down on the reasons for the results in any of these categories. And so that's what I view as the next step. We really want to continue to research and look at these individual cases to see what were the reasons. In terms of dismissals, were we filing cases that should have not been filed in the first place? Or was there something that happened in the course of the case investigation? Perhaps a witness refused to testify or left the state or was not available, or some other evidentiary problem occurred. So those are the kinds of things that we really need to drill down on now and look carefully at, because we want to make sure that these decisions are not being made on a racial basis, or that bias is not impacting those decisions.
And so that was what District Attorney Beth McCann had to say about all of that. I think what she and others involved in this discussion this afternoon and late this morning, they basically said if there's not a study in the first place of how prosecutors are reaching their conclusions and how the justice system works, that nothing is going to happen anyway. So they basically said now it's time to drill back down into what we learned, how we can make changes from there, and continue to hopefully improve their processes between how they're charging people and what police are doing.
So a study that's years in the makings, but clearly still, like as you said, Blair, kind of a launching off point in what is really a greater conversation about social racial justice, police practices. Blair Miller, thanks for joining us. Blair is going to have a story going through this whole report. Like you said, 45 pages. He'll be breaking that down for everybody on the denverchannel.com. That story will be available later today. And our 360 guru, Russell Haythorne, will have a 360 look at this issue on Denver 7 News at 5. Blair, thanks.